Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Higher Line podcast. This one's 2 years in the making. We've got our friend Mike Glover of Fieldcraft Survival. Literally every time we tried to do this, something like the weather or the cosmos stopped us from doing it. So welcome, Michael.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I mean, it's amazing to be here virtually with you in this virtual world.
Virtual world. It is cool. My ex-mother-in-law, when I first met her, told me, my name's Michael, she said, like within 30 seconds of meeting her, the only people I ever knew named Mike are bad. That's what she told me. and her son was named Michael. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, she's right. Like every Mike I've ever known. My dad was a Mike. I'm a Mike. All my friends, Mike. We all got in trouble. So are you a Mike?
I'm a Mike, man. I'm a Mike through and through.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a dick in some ways, but I'm not in a lot of ways. So that's what all Mikes would say.
That actually is totally what all Mikes would say. Because that's what I would say. In other ways, I'm really kind. Yeah, exactly. So you did a lot of years of service in the military, and then you got out and you started Fieldcraft Survival. Let's just get like a little backstory before we get into it.
Yeah, I joined the Army at 17, did nearly 20 years. I mean, I say 20, but I didn't really do 20 because I did about 16, 17 years of active, and the rest was reserve time. Some guys equate the reserve time, like if I do 1 week in a month for a year, they call it, I've done a year of service. And that's how the military equates it. But technically speaking, I didn't do full 20 years. I did 16 active and about 3 of reserve time. And then I transitioned basically into the National Guard off active duty, and then winded up resigning. And that's how you do it in the Guard. You just say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. And they moved me to the inactive ready reserve.
So half your life.
Most of my life, I was in the military, and then, 4 years in the infantry, the rest of it in special forces, and then did some contract time. And then I had to step away from that to start Fieldcraft, man. You know this as well as I know. If you half-ass business, you're just not going to get anything done.
Yeah. That's kind of like anything.
Yeah.
Can't really half-ass anything and try to get it done. And what'd you do in the Army? I know some of it, but I know you did the SF, but you also had duty as honor guard, right?
Yeah, my first 4 years was really weird, man. I joined the Army to be an infantryman, and that was guaranteed in my contract. But I also joined the Army to be an airborne ranger. And back in the day, they had some program called 11 X-Ray, where they kind of selected your job in 11 series, which is just combat arms, infantry. And they chose me to be an 11 Hotel. Essentially, it's just an infantryman who drives a heavy armored vehicle to do anti-tank crap. And I didn't know it at the time, but when they selected me to do that in basic training, there's no 11 Hotels, which is the identifier, in Ranger Regiment. So they said, hey, Mike, you're not going to the Rangers. And I'm like, well, that's what I joined the Army to be. And my contract says it right here. And they said, you should have told us before you went to 11 Hotel training. And so essentially I got duped out of that. And they said, well, the only way we could do it is we could send you to this place called the Old Guard and change your MOS with a 4187, which they did. I mean, they literally crossed my MOS out, crossed 11 Hotel, and then wrote 11B and did a little initial. And that was it. But I owed the 3rd Infantry Regiment, which is known as the Old Guard, 4 years. So I went there prior to 9/11, and to be honest, I hated it. And I didn't join the Army to be in a ceremonial unit. I joined the Army to fight. And so when I went there, luckily for me at the time, they had a scout platoon that did a whole bunch of cool field stuff. But I decided to, I guess if I'm here, I might as well be all I could be. And
that's interesting. Knowing that you did that, and I know that's a very, that's a tiny population of the Army that ever does that job. I've never met anybody else that has done that. I assumed that you must have wanted to, for some reason, go there.
Yeah. So the Old Guard, the actual unit, is a small number of the Army. You know, it's the oldest military unit and organization in the Army, but it's become a ceremonial unit because we're doing the funerals. And this is prior to 9/11. So, I mean, they weren't doing a lot of that, but they were doing it for Arlington National Cemetery, dignitary protection, riot control in Washington, D.C., a whole bunch of extra duties. But when I was there, I said, hey, listen, what is the most elite thing that I could do here in this unit? And they said, you can go to try out to be a tomb guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And so that's where I went. I tried out to be a tomb guard and was successful 9 months into it. And then spent really my whole career hiding away, doing the tomb guard duties until I decided to get out.
So 3 years or so you do that.
Yeah, I got my tomb guard badge. It took me a year to get my tomb guard badge. I did go to airborne school, ranger school, a whole bunch of other stuff in between. But then I guarded the tomb for about a year and some change. And then I was a tomb guard trainer for about a year. And, you know, at that time, pre 9/11, pre GWAT, there's nothing really going on in the military. So I actually made a deliberate decision to get out. I was like, dude, I'm not doing this. I'm going to college. I'll be in the FBI or something cool, because there was nothing going on. I did ask for Ranger Regiment as a re-enlistment option, but I wanted sniper school and Halo school en route, which would have guaranteed me to be a sniper in regiment, but they couldn't give me Halo school. And so I said, okay, if you can't give me Halo school, then you obviously don't want me. And so I actually had a break in service. I got out of the military September 3rd of 2001. And then, you know, things happened a week later. You know, 9/11 happened, and that changed everything for me.
So welcome back, Michael.
Yeah, that was a quick turnaround for me.
Yeah. Is it true that a tomb guard can't swear?
Yeah, it's one of those. It's so funny.
I think I read that somewhere. My wife and I were at we were out at the Palm Springs Air Museum, and they had a whole setup of the tomb there. It was built out of like plywood and stuff and painted to look like stone. And they had a bunch of, I believe somebody that was famous, like had something to do with the museum. So there was this big display about it, and there was a plaque, something. It was old paper, and like one of the rules I saw was like, you can never swear in public your entire life, or you got to like hand in your badge, kind of. Is that legit?
I've seen that paper, and there's a whole bunch of things on it that aren't technically true. Like they say you can't drink if you're a tomb guard, you can't swear, and there's this whole virtuous thing, and some of that's true. Like you can have your badge revoked anytime in your life for doing something immoral or unethical that goes against the values of the tomb.
Okay, so something that would dishonor that position.
Yeah.
Okay. And so maybe that thing was like drafted by somebody that was in that unit that had like a little different moral code or religious background.
Yeah, it could, and it's probably. I mean, the tomb's been guarded since 1948, 24 hours a day. So it could have been early on in the tomb guard days. And I've actually seen there's a whole bunch of badges because we have a badge holder board downstairs where the guards hang out to change and everything else. And there's a whole bunch of individual badges that say revoked. And so you don't even know who the name is. It just says revoked, and that person doesn't have a badge anymore.
It's a pretty powerful thing to watch. I tell people that have never been to Arlington, they should go there and sit and watch that. And pisses me off. I've been there numerous times in my life watching people like that don't have they're at the Eiffel Tower or some shit, you know, like to take photos, and they forget they're in a cemetery and that tomb's got bones in it, you know?
Yeah, it happens all the time, especially with foreigners that just don't don't get it. I mean, they're talking at like a 10 while everybody else is at a 2, and they're not. I mean, I've had people cross the chains, which the chains keep people out. It's, you know, a gate essentially around the tomb. Just step over the chains and walk right out on the mausoleum and walk straight up to the tomb. And
then what do you guys do? Go grab them by their shirt?
Yeah, what we do is we have like a tactic. We call it breaking somebody off. But you go to port arms, and you know you're holding a rifle, and you immediately intercept them and put yourself in between that person and the tomb. And then we say, we give commands as best we can, as professional as we can to them, to let them know they're not, like if that was going to happen, they cross, we say, no access to the tomb is allowed. Please return to the chains, or something like that. Or it is requested that everyone remain silent and standing when people are yelling and running their mouths. It happens periodically. The best thing we have is there's like a little box, and it's a place where we have a phone that goes down to the tomb quarters, and we can call somebody. We say, hey, this guy, in the brown t-shirt, he's acting weird. Keeps trying to cross the chains. Can you come up here and handle it? And then one of the guys will run up, and he's seconds away to QRF to help somebody out.
I've been there and watched something like that happen, and it's interesting after the fact. Everybody's like, oh, yeah. I remember where I'm at now. Yeah. Is there anything else like that in the world where we honor the dead like that, where we've got 24-hour service like that? Is there something?
It's definitely, they're everywhere. I mean, in Italy, in England, and there's a whole bunch of different countries, even countries in the Middle East that have their unknown version of it. But to be honest, having seen those in person and then having experienced the Tomb of the Unknowns, nobody does it better than the U.S. military for protecting and, the dignity and the vigilance. I mean, you can go to the ones in Europe, for example, and they'll just hang out there and BS while they're guarding whatever they're guarding. So it's not really a vigilant cycle of people guarding the tomb for the right reasons. It's just checking the block for a lot of these places.
That's okay. Did that change you, that time there? Did that sculpt you as a young man? I'm sure when you started versus left, you had grown up some, but did that change your worldview, your idea of patriotism or honor or duty and things like that?
I think it really, I was taught from a young age to say yes, sir, yes, ma'am. My dad was an Army guy. My uncle was a Navy guy. My family comes from a long line of military, including generals in the Civil War. So I had that bred into me, but I will say absolutely, being there at 17, 18 years old, that instilled everything that I took away from service, the sacrifice, the discipline, the duty, the honor. And, there's no better way and probably faster way than getting that than experiencing, the epicenter of selfless sacrifice. These guys gave their lives, but also gave their identity. And people don't realize how much of a big deal that is. I
never really even thought about that. Yeah. So all the other, not all of them, but most every other tombstone's got somebody's name and birth date on it. And you can track that back to who they were.
Yeah. There's for example, in 1997, I was actually on the actual duty for it. The Vietnam Unknown, which is the center crypt as you're looking at it. So there's a big crypt, which underneath that is the World War I unknown. To the left, as you're looking at it, is World War II. Vietnam or Korea is in the middle, and then Vietnam's on the right. They actually disinterred the Vietnam Unknown because they discovered who he was through DNA testing. And I was on the disinterment ceremony for that. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, these are just bones of a human being, but that was an American, and they're pulling them out. His name was Major Michael Blassie. He was an Air Force pilot shot down in Vietnam. The family had the option to leave him interred and guarded 24 hours a day, and they actually were going to put his name on it. But they opted to take him home to St. Louis, Missouri. So they left that crypt empty and dedicated it to all the men and women who served and died in Vietnam. But they could have very easily interred it with bones from the Vietnam Unknown, because we have a lot of soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen that were unknown or unidentified because, they didn't have the ability to extract DNA, or they didn't know the circumstances and how or, where they were killed. And it's just fragmentations of bones. It's like, man.
That had to be pretty heavy to watch.
It was heavy. It was super heavy. Prior to 9/11, that unit, we were doing veteran services in Arlington National Cemetery, and it didn't really connect because we weren't there at a time of war. But whenever we did something wartime, like disinterring the Vietnam Unknown, it's like, man, this dude was a Air Force pilot who for so long, his family lived on, through the 60s and 70s and 80s, not knowing where their loved one is. And I can't imagine that happening now, where you just hope and you pray that, that person, it might be still alive.
I think the interesting thing about that, and what really separates us from so many other cultures, is that just pure care for each other. There's so many people talk about like how rough the world is now. And I chuckle like, hey man, go look what happened in Russia in the early 1900s, or China in the 1950s, or hundreds of millions of bodies litter the earth, the slaughtered in war and in various types of genocide. None of those people were treated in this manner, but we Americans, we don't do that with our dead. Not that other countries don't honor their dead, but I think that really separates us.
Yeah, I think it truly does. I mean, if you ever been in the Middle East or you ever been to a foreign country, it doesn't even have to be a third world country. I mean, we don't even realize how good we have it, because if you look at baby, infant death rates, if you look at illness, I mean, I've been in Africa where I had a guy I was with that was African have a heart attack, and we couldn't even get him basic beta blockers to help him survive, a small level heart attack.
Just because there was none to be had.
There are none there. I mean, his clinic was like a place where you had bodies stacked inside the place, and nobody was getting treated medically for anything. It's like, man, this is basic, I mean, me and the lieutenant colonel that I was with, I was a sergeant major at the time. We went and kicked in a pharmacy door that was closed because it was closed on that day for some reason. And literally went through the shelves off of Google and found beta blockers and gave those to them because we didn't have any other options. It's like the basic level of, hygiene, sanitization, all the basic stuff that we take for granted, running our faucets and flushing our toilets, don't have overseas.
I chuckle when I listen to people talk about, and this will piss some listeners off, but people that get mad about like city water supplies, the city water supplies are poisoned with fluoride, and like there are people drinking their own shit, in other towns or other, even there are places in America where very poor communities where they don't have good sewer and water systems, but like, there's a reason that we treat our water the way we do. And there's a reason that we're not dying of like cholera and, diseases that killed people 100 years ago.
Yeah, we're super lucky, man.
Yeah. So you did all this time in service, you get out and you decide you're going to start Fieldcraft, or did something else happen in between?
No, I was a contractor for the CIA. I did that for a few years. And one of my trips in Pakistan, they had this pretty epic earthquake, and the earthquake, it wasn't part of the circumstance, but it was beating me down. That trip was really beating me down. I had a life back at home, and I came, I left that life behind and realized, I wanted something else besides living in a shipping container in a foreign country. I mean, I've done that my whole life. And I wanted to do that my entire life. I mean, I pissed away relationships, my personal life, just so I can go to war as many times as I could, because it was kind of ingrained in me to fight. And I think the first time that I realized that I didn't necessarily want to fight anymore, I kind of wanted to do something else. I was in that shipping container and said, I talked to a Navy SEAL buddy of mine who was my partner, my riding buddy. I said, hey man, let's brainstorm over some business ideas. And we lined out a couple ideas. I mean, a tactical. You were kind of coming up with a way to the next step after you left that profession. Yeah. And course of action development, just lining out a plan. It's so funny thinking about it now, because I even did like a logo and it was like Fieldcraft, and it had the outline of a piece of wheat in the middle of it. Because I'm like, I don't even know where to start. And I show people and they're like, are you doing agriculture? Are you like, I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe this is the wrong idea. So just starting there, and I learned lessons every single day, but that was.
I wonder why you drew the wheat. What got you to draw the wheat? I mean, that made me think of like cultivating self. Like that's what it made me think of as you said it.
Yeah, wheat for. Well, fieldcraft as a word, I almost went with the word tradecraft, but fieldcraft, I was a sniper in special forces most of my career. And so being a sniper, fieldcraft is the technical and tactical skill sets that you have in a rural environment. And so you could be a cool shooter, but that doesn't make you a sniper. I think making you a sniper is your ability to do all the things cumulatively that make up a sniper. Observation, building hide sites, building ghillie suits, stalking, and the list goes on. So when I lined out fieldcraft, I really thought about being in a rural environment and low crawling through weeds or low crawling through the ground.
I see.
And then I demonstrate, in branding, obviously, when you put something up, it's got to catch people's attention for kind of the reasons why you want to get into it in the first place. And unless I was going to be a barley farmer, it probably wouldn't have worked out the best.
Hey, you need it for beer. One of my favorite beverages.
Me too. In fact, one of the things on the list of jobs that I wanted to do was own a brewery. And at that time, I think it was 2014, 15-ish, craft beer wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, it didn't blow up back then. There was only a few players in it that were significant. And when I was in Yemen, I used to smuggle in wheat or barley or grain. And we had basically the agency chief that I was with there allowed us to brew our own beer. And so we were getting local Yemeni honey, smuggling grain. We even had a guy smuggle in yeast, like good yeast. And we were doing brewing of beer every Friday and then doing a tasting. He even built us a $20,000 brick oven pizza oven. And we were doing homemade pizza with the yeast that we used in the beer.
Badass.
And tastings. And I was like, dude, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I love it because I love the chemistry. I love the science. I love the history behind it. But that's still something on my bucket list, man. I'd love to do that one day.
There's a great documentary. I think the title of it is, it's about beer. Basically, the premise is without beer, there'd be no people.
Yeah.
Because beer, like the whole, like they used it to that early fermenting process to put water on ships so they could travel. And it was a way that they could put water into skin bags and go across deserts. And we proliferated the planet because of beer.
Yeah, the microbacteria that's fermented in that killed a lot of the stuff that would kill you. So it was like a one way to sanitize your water. Yeah. Obviously there's a boiling process there, but it's like it's the one thing that you could drink in that time, whether it was medieval time or Egyptian time, where you didn't run the risk of dying from some kind of disease or virus.
I think a lot of people don't realize how important alcohol was. Like even colonial America, like Sam Adams, his name as a kid was Sammy the Malter. That was his nickname. And he was the dude that his family brewery that he, did whatever needed to be done with the malt. Or like there was a great book I have on Ben Franklin. He saved money over all of his coworkers as a young man because he didn't drink beer all day long. The guys from the brewery twice a day would come through all the shops and fill everybody's stein up. And that was their like beverage to keep them working all day. And then at the end of every week, they'd owe the brew house, money. Like that was just, they all drank all day long.
How awesome would that be if a Toyota Tacoma showed up and loaded pallet of beer and they just had a tap.
No wonder they only lived to 40, That's the funny thing. We talk about that like it's all disease. Like, well, they were drinking all day long.
Yeah. I think it's, in researching and studying, I'm big on gut biome for some reason. I think it's super interesting. And like kimchi. You know, I'm half Korean, so I grew up eating kimchi.
I love me some good kimchi.
Dude, fermented vegetables, period. Fermented anything, kombucha, all these different things. Some guy, one of our fans, I don't even know the dude who sent it to me, but they sent me a book on fermenting different things. Mm-hmm. Amazing book. I wish I knew the title of it. But I'm super interested in that because the benefits of even wine and beer, you know, if you're crushing alcohol, it's different, but when
you're saying crushing for the listener, you're saying if you're drunk.
Yeah. If you're just annihilating yourself, there's obviously a downfall of it. But man, it's so interesting, man. I love it.
I drink almost 4, 5, 8 days a week, a couple beers, and I'm super freaking healthy. I go to the doctor twice a year. My blood work's awesome. I'm not like a triathlete or anything, but like you said, if you cross into that boundary where you're overtaxing your liver and your system, then it becomes a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm a 2 beer max kind of guy. I mean, if I
Tall
do
boys though, big old like 40 ounces.
Yeah, 40 ounce. I just can't. I've never been good with alcohol. Like if I drink and I meet a certain threshold, I'll be obsolete for 3 days afterwards.
Well, that ain't the Korean part of you then, because all my Korean buddies can drink everybody under the table.
They drink that soju and sake, man. It's super
soju. My buddy Sang Lee is Korean, and he'll bust out the soju. Like
that's rough stuff.
Wake up, feels like somebody drove an ice pick through your head.
It's like flammable.
Yeah. That fermentation book, I got a sister that lives on an island in Maine. Beautiful little island. It's called Little Cranberry Island. It's outside of Acadia National Park. They're lobster fishermen, the family that she's married into. And it's like another time. There's like one car on the island, and you like walk around and you get on the fishing boat, you go catch lobsters, and then you're home reading books. And her and her boyfriend have a huge garden, and they're always experimenting with fermenting, and you gotta be careful. You kill yourself too if you don't know what you're doing. Oh yeah,
you could jack yourself up, man. That yeast, and I'm doing. There's a whole bunch of vinegars, like vinegar-based stuff, which is safe to do. But I mean, if you let any kind of vegetables go for like I'm doing canning and jarring of meats, set up and put yourself in a
botulism, man.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Yeah,
easily.
They did this island's really rocky, so they got a bunch of pigs a few years ago to raise for meat, and they fenced off like a 1/4 acre of forest behind the house on this island. It's like tamarack and pine trees, and everything's just like mossy covered rocks, and they let the pigs just tear the forest floor up for the whole summer, and then they had a good area to grow a garden. They built a greenhouse back in there, but they did a bunch of dry aging of those pigs, and we grew up on a farm, and we've done all this stuff like we're talking about, but I open up her coat closet and they've got like a half a pig wrapped in cheesecloth covered in mold. My sister's like, you want some? And I'm like, oh, like you're experimenting. If we were like in Italy with some old, butcher that knew what was up, like, I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't know, man. That pig died like 2 years ago,
Wow, man. It's people don't realize before fridges and freezers and everything else, that was the preservation of anything that we ate long term was salts, drying, planked wood, smoking. I mean, the list goes on, but it's like that was how we preserved everything. And, some of the best foods that you put in your mouth and gut today that's beneficial to your microbiome is those things that are aged, that are full of bacteria.
Yeah. What's that fish called? Some Alaskans do it, but it's from like the Nordic countries. They just dry it like on wood racks, and it's like it's a big hardy fish. When it's dry, it's the whole fish they dry out. They soak it in water, and it can be years old, and the tissue swells back up once the water comes back into it.
I know you're talking about. It's the Inuit do that.
Yeah.
It's a staple of their diet.
Yeah, they dry it, and it looks like a piece of freaking leather, and it swells back up. But that's very interesting. I've got a friend that washes his hands like 18 times before dinner. And when it's time to eat, like, don't touch me. Like, man, you've probably got the most pussified gut in the world.
I think a big problem with a lot of people they don't realize this. I mean, there's a lot of science tying the connection of your gut and neural pathways in the brain. I mean, there's even a study of a recent young man who had ADHD, and he was dealing with all these behavioral issues. So they're like, hey, we don't know what to do here. And they started looking at his microbiome. The family did, doing some tests, and figured out that he was super allergic to a lot of foods, and he had a really bad microbiome. And so they did a feces transplant, where they basically take another person's feces that has good microbiome and shove it up the kid's butt, and then it helps with his microbiome.
They call that a Manhattan transfer in some areas. They do. That's actually a name.
Really?
Yeah. Google it later, but do it. Yeah, Google it from somebody else's computer.
Oh, you ever heard of the one? What is it called? There's in prison. Oh man, they do a fermentation of their poop.
Shut up!
Yeah, and they turn it into a drink. It's actually a drink. Oh man, it's got a funny name too.
Okay, so they're using their shit as like the starter to make booze.
Yeah, yep. And it's something real funny. It's like, oh man, it's poopy. It's a poopy.
Damn, imagine how hard up you'd have to be for a buzz to drink shit wine.
Yeah. Oh my God, man. And they're probably using poop water. Oh man, it's the
that is freaking gross. So your company, I've noticed. Do you know my friend Z Durham? Instructor Z on Instagram. He's a fit group guy. Yeah. Z and I were just talking about this, and it's nothing new, but I'm happy to see guys like you, him, and others trying to cultivate, and it's what we've tried to do with our business, trying to cultivate a sense of community rather than sell a product.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit with what you're doing.
Yeah, partly selfishly, I wanted something that felt like team life. You can't replicate a lot of experience, and I think in special operations, that's my narrow take on it, of like the camaraderie that you build with other people. You have like-minded human beings that come from every walk of life, but have one sole focus, and that typically is the objective or the mission. And so the characteristics are similar, and the camaraderie that you build in wartime or in struggle or in training is something that you can't replicate in civilian life. Often you can't do that. And so when I looked at kind of like the business models, I looked at it and I was like, man, you have to build a culture. You have to build a tribe. And I don't really like using the term tribe, because I think a lot of people have negative connotations when they hear tribe.
Like tribalism.
Yeah, tribalism is a bad thing. But I wanted to build something that, preparedness for me has always been a staple of my special operations life. Inadvertently, I never even realized what I was doing when I was prepping for an objective, or doing pre-combat inspections on my kit, or test firing my weapon systems. That whole process is what civilians should really look at when just doing basic things like hiking, camping, going on a road trip, going overseas. And so I realized maybe there's a market there. You identify a market, and I thought that, hey, it's not in me to be a salesman, man. I am not a very good salesman. And maybe I've become a better salesman in pitching community, and then by default I understand proxy, we're going to do good in business. So I never want to cheapen that, because I always want to make the experience, like, I never beg people to do anything, because if you don't want to spend money with us, you don't have to spend money with us, because our content is accessible, it's completely free, and I'm not pushing to make a buck. I just saw like Tony Cowden had posted about some company charging like $13,000-$14,000 for CQB, for people to come in to do CQB training. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that civilians need to know. And I wanted to teach them that, but through the use of community, because I think tragedy and catastrophe is an equal opportunist. And I don't think, a lot of people segregate, especially coming from conservative backgrounds like mine in the military or special operations, they segregate the liberals. Because they say, hey, we're going to do 2A stuff. And that means conservative. But that's a failed business plan in my perspective, because that's such a narrow field of view. And it's very one-sided. So I was like, if I could convince liberals to come out and go, you know what, maybe I should be prepared. I don't like guns. I don't like all this gung-ho stuff, but maybe I should look at preparedness. And that kind of has become the aura of our business model, which is, community first and people first. And then let's train for preparedness together.
I dig it. Yeah, I think that what I didn't see Tony what he posted there. I think it was probably people that listen to this podcast or know me have heard me talk about this a lot. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, none of this training stuff existed. There was a handful of guys, maybe 20 in the whole country. Like, you probably been to Mid-South.
Yes.
Guys like that were doing training. And at that time, like 15 years ago, he had stopped doing anything for the public. Guys like Rogers from Rogers Shooting School, Tom Gibbons from down in Tennessee, Bob Housingay and Mas Ayub. Guys know some of these different names depending on geographically. Gunsight, it's been a staple since the 70s. And then, of course, you get like the whole professional shooters, USPSA IPSC guys, which is like, where Mid-South started. But people don't realize you couldn't just there was no internet. You couldn't go in the phone book and just open up shooting schools or tactical schools. And police departments, for the most part, just got whatever their guys figured out. And now I get a message at least once a week, if not at once a day. Hey man, love your stuff. Might be a vet. I'm getting out of the Marine Corps in a month and I want to start a company like yours. What do I do? And I've been self-employed for over 20 years. And so I've been like that guy, and you got to ask questions, but man, you got no idea. If you're asking me, you don't know what you're about to get yourself into. But where I'm going with that is it's now matriculated into you put something up the other day. I commented to you in private that all these vets are getting out of service and they're going to start training businesses. That was you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I remember I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I was commenting on this saying, I was excited for all the veterans to get out. At the time, I was really deep involved in politics, and I had been talking and speaking, working to affect some Second Amendment laws. And one of the speeches I would give is, we got to keep moving forward, because over the course of the next decade, we're going to have tons of sergeants and officers getting out of service that are going to become managers at the local Walmart. They're going to become managers at the shoe store. They're going to run for mayor. They're going to run for city council. They're going to run for governor or Congress. And now that's happening. So big circle here is this market's flooded, but the guys that are going to charge $13,000 or whatever, I don't think they stick around too long.
Yeah, we've seen them come and go. I mean, even in the short period of time I've been in business, man, it's really crazy to see. I've had buddies contact me and they're like, hey man, I'm going to start a tactical business. I'm like, okay, well, let me hear your business plan. I'm like, well, I got an investor. And I'm like, oh, that's your first problem. You got an investor.
And that usually means some rich guy that thinks it's cool to know a special operations guy.
That's exactly.
Dude, that guy's got all kinds of shit on his chest.
Yep.
He's killed people. I don't know. It's going to be badass. That's usually how that goes.
5 of those business plans start and fizzle because it's just about, one, the tactical space is the hardest business model to, I think, in my opinion, to do.
Are you comparing this to donut shops and automotive repair, any business?
Any business, it's because here's the reason why. I mean, you buy a car wash, it's got predictability, right? The predictability is you know what your return on investment is going to be. I mean, most car washes are 5 to 10 year plans because you have the overhead, the buildings, the service, everything's kind of lined out. It's the same idea with a restaurant where you kind of understand the demographic if you've done your homework. You know,
I gotta sell 1,000 cheeseburgers a week for 8 years to break
exactly.
even.
I know. I got 15 chairs. I got 5 tables. You kind of could lay out that model. Well, when you do it in the tactical space, and you actually line out the model based on your base, based on your training fees, based on if you're doing it versus you're scaling it with other instructors, it's not really good numbers. I mean, the numbers don't work themselves out. And we're at the high end. I mean, to be honest, I mean, we're at the higher end of charging open enrollment for pistol and carbine. We're like $275 up to $300, depending on the travel that we do per student, plus their ammo, plus their travel. So we're not cheap.
Per day.
Yeah. And so
per day.
What people now don't realize is like the liability that's involved, all the things that are involved. It's not a good business just to tactically train. You have to diversify. And one of the things that we diversify in, which we don't even advertise a lot, is our military and government contracts we have on the back end. We have products that we do. We have swag that we do. We have ad spots for podcasts. So I couldn't survive. And I've seen many tactical businesses fall by the wayside because they don't diversify. I mean, these guys who taught, you know, like Gunsight's a great example. I mean, Gunsight from here is 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Gunsight was successful, but they're successful because they've been in business since the 70s. You know, they have the marathon approach. Now,
and their founder was one of the most prolific writers of the 60s, 70s, and 80s on the topic of what we're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, I got most of his books. And I look at, you know, these guys who are coming into it now, and I see their influence, but I'm like, that's not a plan. And that's not a tactic. And that's not real. And so people are going to come and go. People are going to influence and go. But I'm serious about business like you are. I'm here for the long haul. This is a marathon to me. And so I'm kind of protective in that sense where I'm like, man, I don't want people teaching tactics. I like thought provocation. Like I like what you guys do because you're getting people to think. Cognitively, or cognition period, is like the number one skill set that you really can't be born with, that you just have to develop over time. I mean, we all have aptitude, but trying to think through problems is what people should be doing the most of. And I don't have a problem with that type of philosophy because it leads to tactics.
Right.
I always think that's a good thing. But then you have these kids who are teaching tactics and they're doing it in 1-minute blurbs on Instagram. So if I just teach a tactic because I'm just trying to get influence, likes and comments and engagement, and then some kid sees that, imagine what that could lead to. I mean, the idea that, and I talk about retracted gun because it's the easy one to understand. If I teach a kid to draw a pistol from his holster and shoot from the hip, for example, because he's in a confined space without context, and that person reps that again and again and again, and they think it's a good idea. Well, what real life circumstance in America would it be a good idea? If a guy grabs you in a bar, are you going to point shoot him from the hip? So what's your go criteria to think through that process? Well, the real answer is you haven't thought through the process. You haven't ran scenario-based training. You haven't done physical training. And the reason special operations are the best guys in the world at what they do in the implementation or execution of tactics is because they started with the basics and they mastered them again and again and again. And that never stopped. It's just an endless cycle. Versus you just take a random tactic and you go, that's the way to do it.
Right.
And then the kid shoots the person in the bar and goes to prison for the rest of his life.
The tail's wagging the dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's a story I tell students constantly when they want to. I had a friend call me yesterday. He posted something, and this is exactly what you're talking about. He posted him drawing a pistol from appendix because now it's you have to shoot car windows out to be cool. So he was in a car and he drew from appendix and like shot out the windshield and then shot, and then that was the video. And I'm like, you know, whatever, like I don't care about that he posted that, but some guy like wrote the old, like, quote, the old flag your femoral routine, like, end quote. And so this guy got all upset. Like, in the real world, I would never, be concerned about flagging my femoral. I'm like, well, in the real world, I probably would have drove over whatever was in front of me and not drawn my pistol with a stopped car, whatever. I'm just making fun of him. This was over a phone call, not online. But he's like, well, for real. And I'm explaining to him, I said, dude, you put that on the internet. So you might be comfortable drawing a gun and pointing a muzzle at your legs and not traversing the steering wheel and doing all that stuff. But the 10,000 people that watch that video, they look at that and say, okay, that is an application of a skill that I need to learn. And now they think it's like, this is exactly what you're saying. I think it's good. It's scary.
Yeah, that's a great point that you illustrated. Is most of the generation now, because of technology in their hands, look at things very, very mechanically, right? It's diagnostic. It's like, I see something, I just replicate it. That's how I get better at it.
Mm-hmm.
You go online and you're on YouTube and you see you want to be fit. You see a guy in 5 minutes tell you how to be fit, and then you go to the gym and you just replicate what you saw. So I think the danger in tactics is, one, without context, you don't understand really the second and third order effects or the cause and effect of what you're doing. Could be, I mean, I've had friends, like I had a buddy who he was getting his ass beat at a bar by a whole bunch of guys, and his wife had a gun in her purse, pulled the gun and shot and killed the guy who was bouncing her husband's head off the concrete.
Okay.
And so, in case in point, he taught her self-defense. And he said, listen, if I'm ever in trouble, this is how you hold the gun, and you point the gun and you shoot the gun. But without context, she doesn't understand what's the go criteria for defending my life, or even what to say post-assault or post-defense. And so she does that. She shoots, and she thinks, I just saved my husband's life, which she literally did. But the jury didn't think that. The jury thought she was at least guilty of manslaughter, and she went to prison for 5 years.
Damn.
Which ended in a divorce and all this drama. And I'm like, that's what happens when you're taught tactics, which is a technical skill set, without cognitive understanding of a scenario or a circumstance, or using your head to think yourself through a problem. And that's what we talk about often, is like, if you're in a gunfight, you've done probably 10 things wrong prior to leading up to that gunfight.
Yeah. For that story you're talking about, for the listener, I think you'll agree, she could have said, hey, I have a gun, get away from my husband or I will shoot you. And I think that's kind of what you're driving at, but she did what she was taught to do.
Yeah. In fact, that was one of the reasons that she went to prison for manslaughter. One, they said the guy, when she pulled the gun, turned, let go of her husband, and held his hands up like this, and she shot him. And the
witnesses saw that.
There was gunpowder residue on his palms, and she said he was going for the gun, but that's speculative, and that's her story versus the witnesses' stories, who are friends of the offender. And so it's like, man, when we look at anything with a firearm or self-defense where life and death and lives are involved, it's like, man, you can't just half-ass that. And ultimately, as somebody who's been downrange a dozen times and killed, dude, I've killed a lot of people in combat. I don't brag about killing people in combat. It was part of the job, so I accept it as part of the job. But somebody coming from somebody who's killed people for the right reasons in combat, when I see guys don equipment and they run around and shoot paper targets that look like people that just have guns or whatever in their hands, and then they laugh and they joke and they do whatever they're doing, I'm like, man, do you really have what it takes to shoot a bad guy in the face, to end a human being's life? You think you do because you run a gauntlet that you've set up and orchestrated, but do you really have what it takes? Because I think that's the ultimate question for me in judging that. Is it reminds me of a bunch of privates who don't know what the hell they're doing. And I need to take those privates and be like, listen, let me explain why this is so important for you to understand. And some people get it. And I've been very, very good at the reception from some people, but some people just don't get it because for them, it's just a bottom line. It's a analytic, or it's an engagement, or it's, money at the end of the month. I've
told people many times that I've got some dozen or more friends that are the upper echelon of shooters in the world, like, top USPSA guys. And for raw skill, they're bad. But I know one of them in particular, I could probably beat him to death with an open hand before he'd shoot me. I know the guy. He's badass with blazing down steel and paper. He shoots for Team America, for IPSC, travels the world. But like, if it came down to it, I could just slap him and he'd curl up in a ball, because he doesn't, and that's not me picking on him. He'll tell you, I don't want to shoot anybody. Like, when he leaves the range, that gun's got a chamber flag in it. It's in a case. And that's not a bad thing either, but just, the context of it, that gun and his training is for a game. And then there's other guys that shoot that game, that like Tony Cowden or JJ Rakaza or other people that have service or military or law enforcement jobs. Jared Reston's a good guy that comes to mind, that apply those physical skills to the job. So it's interesting. I've told guys many times, you look really cute, but most of my friends would shove that gun up your ass. And they don't like that. Like, I can draw really quick. Yeah, but you never would. You never would. Like my friend Z or Paul Sharp, like black belt jujitsu guys, they're just going to they're going to crush you. You're like, you don't get it. Like
Yeah, I know. Like, I think about, like, in special operations, we're very lucky in that we are afforded many opportunities to become better at individual little skill sets. Like, when I wanted to be really good at hacking, I went to ethical hacking school because that was a requirement for my job at the time. When I wanted to be good at photography, I hired
ethical
one of the
hacking.
I know. Don't you love that? Just put ethical in front of anything bad.
Only the government could connect those two things together. Ethical thievery.
Ethical killing. It's okay.
Yeah,
ethical killing.
Yeah.
But when I even did photography, and I hired good photographers. And so across the spectrum of my skill set, shooting was one of them. But the shooting in war, or my engagements in war, were very different than what is being emulated today in social media. For example, a lot of my engagements were static because I used night vision goggles. I used lasers on my guns.
By static, for the listener, you're saying you're in a hide site somewhere, you're not moving, you're shooting a target that you see that perhaps isn't shooting back at you or doesn't see you.
Yeah, absolutely. That might be staring out in darkness, and I'm in that darkness and I could see them completely fine. Or even in daylight engagements where it's me, but I have a team full of my mates that are taking slivers of the pie in close quarters battle. I just did a video on a single man CQB because I think it's important to understand like how to move and manipulate a gun by yourself with a lot of different things, 360 degrees that you have to cover. And so when you see these guys running around, like you're in kit, you got your night vision on, you got your gun, and you're running around by yourself, there is no context. Like when the guys who have been to war, who have been to combat, who are special operations guy, looks at you and goes, whatever you're doing is very entertaining, but it has no place in reality. And then they look you in the face like, you're just jealous. It's like, okay, man, I'm just going to go back over here in my world and I'll let you just do your thing in your world. But what I hate is that their worlds are influencing young minds to think that that's okay.
That is a problem. I think like they're entitled to do that in this day and age, but we're entitled to say, hey, like what you, yeah.
100%. And I think you're absolutely right. There's no part of me, because I'm very liberal in this fashion where I don't want anybody to not be able to do anything. That's my 2A stance. It's like, if you want to own a freaking M1 Abram, you should be able to do that. But I have nothing against what.
Funny you should mention that. I've got one on order. I don't. They don't. They didn't take my credit card. That would be cool. There's a story I remember. A friend of mine from the unit, assaulter with the unit, now owns a training company. I don't want to say his name, but his classes, and he's awesome. He's a good friend. He's a great guy. His classes basically revolve around ready up drills. And this guy did, I remember him over drinks one time telling me that he knows he went on at least 1,040 direct hits, and he never got shot and he didn't die. And he put a video up years ago of him prepping for a class. And he's like, hey, if you're coming to class, hope you like ready up drills. And somebody's like, he holds the gun stupid. And I'm like, you know, like you're saying, like you're looking at this the wrong way. Like he assaulted bad people over 1,000 times and didn't die. Who cares if he's got a tutu on and, you know, a strap-on dildo? He didn't die. Like that. Like you're thinking about this like, well, it's got to look a certain way, or he didn't have the right multicam pattern on, or like
I think it's very weird that I have this theory, and I have a theory that special operations guys throughout history have shaped popular culture more than any demographic from the military throughout time. If you take, for example, World War II, from 41 to 45, you have a great example of Office of Strategic Services, commandos that came out of that war and were building P-51 hot rods. They were doing all this cutting and welding. You had aviators, which I'll include in that special operations genre, that were coming out wearing the leather coats. Everybody wanted to wear the bomber jacket, wanted to drive the hot rod. They were doing the same things with motorcycles. You had the Vietnam era guys. Most of the Vietnam era special operations guys that came to the light, the John Plasters of the world, they came out, they wrote books, and they affected popular culture. In fact, they're the ones who stood up these shooting schools originally out of the 70s and 80s. Mm-hmm. They're the guys who shaped SWAT teams and their tactics, but they're also guys who created really what we see today as like pop culture. And then take it to GWAT. The GWAT, you have the bearded, tattooed ones. What are those guys that are known as, what are they called? When you wear a beard and you have all the tattoos, you're a hipster. So you have a hipster demographic where the guys, they want to look the part as a special operations guy. So I see all these guys on social media, they're looking the part, but they forget what they're emulating. Like if you're in kit and you're in multicam and you're holding a 416 and you got nods on, or you get a helmet on, that is literally the R&D and the testing and evaluation equipment that we've evaluated over the GWAT, and that's what we do and wear. So if you're criticizing the guys who actually did it for a living, then what does that say about you as individuals that are emulating or pretending that you want to be something?
It's bizarre, man. It's like a mental sickness, actually.
Well, I take it with a grain of salt, and I also understand that, people emulate what they love, right? If they have a passion for it, they pretend. If you're an emulator of medieval times and battles or ninja swords and whatever, it's because you love it so much. But if you love it so much, why don't you do it? If you love it so much, why don't you get the experience and the context, and then look at what the guys like myself and other guys who came out of that community are doing, and realize we're not doing that, and there's a reason we're not doing that.
There's a quote that comes to mind. My friend Dave Spalding told me this once. He was sitting at a dinner during some kind of training conference, and there's a bunch of tools talking about like rat's tourniquet versus cat and et cetera. And one of the guys at the table was a PJ, and the guys talking were all the dudes you're talking about, the guys that are living vicariously. And I don't want to bash on people just because they didn't do a job, but they're having this argument, and somebody says like, well, what do you think, to the PJ? And for those of you listening, these guys are like paramedics with angels' wings that fall from heaven and save down special operations soldiers. He says, well, I think, I like this tourniquet. It worked a lot, blah, blah, blah. And, whatever. I don't want to sit and have dinner and talk about this, was basically his attitude. And they're like, well, you're wrong because blah, 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 blah. And he looked at them and said, your opinion does not trump my experience. You know, like I lived this, I did this. Like, I don't go to the doctor and then like argue with their diagnoses. Like, I don't have a medical degree. I don't go to the mechanic and tell them, well, I think that, you know, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I might have an opinion based on my research, but I'm going to go with what the mechanic says or what the doctor says. It's a bizarre, this internet's led to a bizarre world where we can have opinions that maybe we would not have.
Yeah, it's that platform. It just gives us a pedestal where we feel, you know, I don't even like the guys who think the accumulation of your following is an indicator of your success. Like, just because you have a lot of followers, that's not a metric for success.
Just told a guy that. I got a message from an old student that said, hey, man, I haven't seen your stuff for a while. Looks like business is great. And I said, what tells you that? I haven't talked to this guy in 2 years. He goes, well, you've got like 10,000 more followers. And I literally responded. I go, that literally means zero. Like, especially in the context of earning a living. And if I could put a Speedo on and start a channel where I just oiled myself with baby oil every day and probably get all kinds of followers. I'm still doing this for some reason.
I like that.
But like that's not going to pay the bills.
Yeah, it's not, it's not social equity. Just because you have a social following doesn't mean it equates to profit or it equates to a business. And so these kids now, they think that popularity is equitable to experience it. It's like,
it's not just kids though, Mike. It's not just kids. There's a lot of adults that feel that too. I've got marketing directors, vice presidents of marketing for big companies in our field that automatically assume, oh, Mike Glover's got 150,000 or 2 million subscribers. As such, he can sell us product. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
It
did, right? It did used to work that way a couple of years ago for a short period of time. It doesn't work that way anymore.
And even for the little bit that it did, I like, not to go off topic, like friends will tell me like, oh, Instagram's blocking me. Maybe people are just bored of seeing you run around and shoot targets. You know, like, I mean, there's a reason that the best sitcoms on television stop being made. Yeah. You know, like, people get sick of watching Friends over and over again, or Cheers or whatever. After 5 or 10 or 20 years, like, how many times do people get bored with shit?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I think people have, even the 2A community, like I've literally been blocked. Like, my live feed right now is disabled on Fieldcraft Survival because we posted the church shooting stuff, but we blurred it out appropriately. I thought my moral compass was good enough to, I'm like, I'm not going to show these guys getting shot because they just got shot. Like, it happened today. That would be very distasteful to do that. So I covered it up and blurred it all out. But I definitely wanted to show the good guy killing the bad guy, or, in the context that you saw him shoot across the church. And I posted that, had a whole bunch of people repost it, and it was pretty much going viral. And immediately Instagram shut it down, but they blocked our live feed capability.
For how long?
It's still blocked today. It's still blocked today.
You know what's interesting is there's guys, my friend Dave Harrington. Did you ever train with Super Dave Harrington when you went to like Range 37 or anything like that?
Yeah. You
know, like Dave could book classes anywhere in the country tomorrow, and he's got no social media. He's got no website. You got to find somebody who's got his number, and hey man, what's up? All right, let's do it. Get a cases of ammo for me and some targets, and he'll show up and teach a class. There's plenty of guys that have careers without social media and without, big presences and such. It's more than one way to skin a cat. Maybe that's the point I'm driving.
Yeah, and I think that's super important for people to understand in diversifying business. Like, I always like the saying, it's like, oh, I'm a model. And then, like, if your Instagram account goes down, then you're not a model. Like, oh, I'm not a model anymore. It's like, you were never a model. You're a person who took pictures of yourself, posted them on Instagram. And
so, you were never a model.
Never a model. So I think contingency based, where if my social media went off tomorrow, I know me and the guys, which I'm responsible for these guys' livelihood, will be okay, because we have so many, so many things that we're focused on outside of social media that makes a living for the company. And I think that's important for people to realize, is if you're just solely depending on one platform for your, even the guys that were on the fringe that we're talking about, that are maybe the emulators, the guys who just pretend, if those guys disappeared tomorrow, they'd be completely irrelevant tomorrow. Like it would be like, okay, it's gone.
I want to make sure people understand what you just said. Not that you didn't say it clearly. You're saying, and we're not talking about anybody in particular, but you are. And you're saying some of these large accounts, social media wise, and this could be any industry, not just firearms and tactics. It could be fashion, but these people that don't literally have a legitimate business or connection to the world, if their social media outlet went poof, it would take a month or two and people would stop saying, hey, where did XYZ company go? Or where did Bob the Badass go? They would just disappear.
They just disappear. I mean, people always think the world's going to end when a platform or an account goes away, and it just simply doesn't. You just kind of go on with your life. I kind of secretly hope that one day maybe it just goes away, that Instagram just crashes and everybody's accounts just go away. And it's like, that's a real indicator of who's in it for the right reasons and who has legitimacy in the space.
I talk about this with the young dudes that call me looking for business advice, and it's become like a model, right? You get out of the service, or you leave your police department from your side of the equation. You start a social media account, you come up with a logo. Hopefully there's like cross swords or wheat on it. Then you get a hat, a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, maybe a patch. It's got to have Velcro so you can stick it on shit. Then you create 15 to 20 classes, because you got to have a stable full of classes. Yep. You find a couple of your cool buddies to take pictures with. You get sponsors. And then if you're really slick, you find a few big titty girls to show up and take some pictures. And then you show up at SHOT Show, man. And then you're done.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's another.
From time to time, you got to go on and you got to bitch when other people have any measure of success. That guy, man. That dude's fake as I knew a guy that served with him. Guy's a.
That's it, man. You just made a whole bunch of people a couple bucks.
I
think it's funny because the reason I stopped going to SHOT Show, one of the reasons I stopped going, because I used to go there for the military as a special operations guy. I stopped going because now it's not about business. It's about influencers. So if you're an influencer, all of a sudden you're considered a business person. And so you could be, and if you don't, even if you don't have a company affiliation, you could just hustle these other people or these other companies and say, hey, can you hook me up? And they'll hook you up with a pass, because they're saying, well, we support these guys. We'll just bring them in. So you don't even have to have a legitimate business in the space. You show up and now you're getting inundated by influencers. And, no offense to fanboys. I think they're important and critical in business, but it's like,
I think when you say fanboys, you can't say no offense. It's like, no offense to pussies. That's literally what you just said. If you guys didn't read between the lines there with his baby.
Oh man, that's why SHOT Show is just, I can't even take it seriously.
I go for 2 days.
Yeah.
And then we boogie. Usually, like last year, my wife and I went up to Bryan Head in Utah to a ski resort, and this year we're driving down to Phoenix to visit family. And
I'll be there for 2 days. I'll be there I won't be on the floor. Next year we will book an Airbnb. We'll set up a podcast room, and we'll bring people in to do podcasting content, which I think is super important, because you get a good pony of good people at one place. But I'll be there for one day at 511 Tactical on Tuesday, the first day, teaching a free survival seminar, 5 to 6:30. And then I'll probably stay the next day and just hang out and do some podcasts and then roll out. And that's all I could take.
Well, I'll have to put you on the list to come shake your hand and slap you on the ass, because I'm out of there on Wednesday morning. But
Awesome.
it's almost, you can't fault as a business owner. Like, I tell this to guys all the time, like, what we're doing right now is very cost effective for us to broadcast a message. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it's cost effective. And social media is a free billboard. It's like some guy, like, I purchased billboards in my life. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing and business over the years. I have to produce this. You have to produce content, but it's like Instagram says, hey, here's a billboard on the side of a highway with millions of people. Put whatever, climb up on the ladder, paint your shit up there. You know, people want to look, they look. So I can't fault the marketing and sales people at all of these companies when, for them, hey, I'm going to give you that, and in return, you share it. That's super cheap. An ad in a gun rag mag or on Outdoor Channel or something like that for a TV program is thousands of dollars versus, let me give you a set of sights or a t-shirt or whatever. I would do the same thing. It's good business, but I think your point is it's diluting. It's come full circle, though. There's a bunch of companies I stopped doing business with, and I tell them this now: I'll work with you. Nobody gives me shit in return for me to make videos. I don't do that. That to me is like, that's,
I don't either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Yeah. I mean, if it was like you, somebody that I'm friends with, hey man, check this out. If you dig it, use it. Cool, man. That's kind of what I do. If you see me shooting something or using something, like Ernest Langdon, it's a friend of mine. This is his gun, Foresight Solutions. He did the grip job, Ameriglow sights. They've done work with these guys for a decade. They're friends of mine. But it's come full circle now where, like, guys that pulled away from companies, yeah, man, you kind of like sold out, so to speak. Like, all these tool bags are using your stuff. I don't want to name names because some of these guys are friends of mine, but like, everybody gets a code. We all get a code. We all get a code. And it's like, what the is this? You know, it's just stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to me, it's marketing 101, or it's brand awareness 101. If you want to dilute your brand, a real easy way to do it is over saturate your market with influencers who don't bring, like we were talking about equity, they don't bring value to the table. I mean, a cute chick with big titties holding a gun, that's cool. Yeah, everybody likes that. But at the end of the day, it's like, what are you trying to sell? Because if you're trying to sell yoga pants, then yeah, it's going to sell. But if you're trying to sell a gun, then most serious gun owners would look at that and go, that's really cool. You put any gun in her hand, it'd be cool.
It's a beer commercial.
Yeah, what gun is that? It's like, that's dumb.
That's a beer commercial.
Yeah.
It's I got a friend of mine, Talon Sai. It's funny. There's guys that like will say to me, "You're friends with that dude? Like, he's nobody in the industry." And it's like, well, he's not nobody. He had a awesome job in the IT world. Went to college, got a degree, had a good job in a big corporation, and he started a YouTube channel, just like lifestyle. He rides skateboards, he skis, and people liked his style. And he started shooting guns, and he'd come to some of our classes, and he's not a gun guy. He's just like, this is my life. I film it, I put it on the internet. And he began to make enough money that he was able to quit a really good corporate gig and just lives on his terms and goes skiing and rides skateboards and shoots guns. And dudes will say to me, like he's not he didn't earn, one guy said to me, he didn't earn a right at the table. Like, by whose rules, man? The kid's
table is this?
Yeah, like, and whose table, and who set the table, and whose house are we at? Like that's like. So I'm talking to Talon one day, and I told him this. I wasn't like, hey man, somebody doesn't like you. I said, it's weird that humans do this to each other, not just industry people or this community of gun people. I don't like the term industry, but he goes, look, man, like, there's all these people that have these huge marketing contracts with big companies, like $100 million companies, purely because they take pictures of guns and they put them on the internet and people follow, or they repost pictures that somebody else like you or me took of a picture of a gun. And he's like, I don't give a what anybody has to say that like, because Talon creates stuff. He's a online artist of sorts. Like, I don't give a with somebody that, you know, like you compare me to somebody like that, or like, it's a weird, you touched on it earlier. Like we've attached some worth to followers or views or likes. We did that though.
Yeah, it's so weird, man. I think it's a part of our culture and the shaping of how we interact, obviously, with what we perceive as real. And that's my problem. I think the problem I have is the perception of what we assume is real versus what is real. And that's my only beef. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't energy, and I don't give a about what's going on with other people.
Yeah.
In the context of the conversation, I think it's important for people to understand the difference between real and what's not real, especially when it comes to firearms and tactics.
Mm-hmm. You know what's important to me, let you comment on this. Some of the, like, folks will say it's just social media. And I contest it's people communicating through social media. So like, not, he wouldn't say that to my face, not that kind of a scenario, but like, this is social media. We only know each other because social media. I'm still me, you're still you. My business is still what it is. Yours is still what it is. So it's not like it's just social media. It's just a mode of connection. Like it could be writing letters or talking through a CB radio or telephone or whatever the platform is. I've connected with some of the coolest people, like Z Durham's one of my best friends. I would have only known him because of social media. You know, there's so much value to it as well.
There absolutely is. I mean, I wouldn't even have a business right now at where we're at scaled if it wasn't for social media. And I think you're absolutely right. Like the ones and zeros that are translating through your phone is a person on the other end of that. And that's what I distaste about people not understanding is that when they say something mean or they say something evil or they say something dumb, it's like, you're a person, man. You're not just talking to the Ethernet. You're talking, and a whole bunch of people are looking at you going, you're an idiot, or you're skewed. Like and that ties back to the influencing stuff. You make a video and you don't understand what that video is affecting. It's affecting human beings, shaping behavior and trends. I mean, I have more people asking me like what watch I'm wearing or what hat am I wearing.
What watch is that, by the way?
Garmin Phoenix 5X.
I want that one. I use a Garmin, but
I love Garmin watches.
Yeah, me too.
This is the best watch I ever owned. I think they don't realize the amount of influence they do have. And for me, as somebody who has been in a position of being a leader of men, it's a huge responsibility. I take it as a responsibility that what I put out there needs to be somewhat, not on the fringe and somewhat balanced. So I'm not, throwing people off the edge, creating a cult following, doing extreme shit. I just want to be really balanced because I'm balanced in my life. I'm not a fringe actor in real life, so I don't want to be that way online. And I think people think that if they want to accelerate their political aspirations, their popularity, their profits, they just need to be more fringe. And that's where it gets scary because it's like, how far are you going to go before shit starts falling off? Like a year ago, there was people doing cartwheels and shit with live guns, like shooting balloons off people's heads and shit. Just weird shit. Did
you ever see me walk on a slack line shooting a live gun? I've done it.
Well, I think that's cool. That's awesome. It's balanced.
It was on private property. I stretched a slack line between two trucks.
Yeah, and I'm guilty. I've done a whole bunch of things.
But that's not dangerous, though. I walk on a slack line every day, and I was on private property with like 5 miles of open ground.
No, I think the.
But I got your point. People do. Yeah.
Where it got
like,
weird.
How far can I take this?
Exactly. Where it got weird is like, how far can I? How can I go viral? Like, what is the thing that I have to do to go viral? And people started doing some crazy shit, man. And I'm like, no wonder you getting banned. No wonder people are shutting you guys down. Like, if you want to be a 2A representative and actually stand for the Second Amendment of the Constitution and have a voice in the actual legislation and protection of that, you can't be doing cartwheels with guns.
That's so my time in politics. That was we'd take thousands of people to our capital, thousands. We helped run one of the largest, not one of the largest Second Amendment gatherings in the nation in our state capital of Illinois. We'd have 10,000 people there. And dudes would show up with like shirts, like to go walk into our governor's office, to walk into our state legislature's office and be like, from my cold dead hands, like sleeveless. Like you might not own a suit, but at least put like a flannel on and tuck it in or something. And like you're representing me. And I get I shouldn't have to put on airs. I should be able to be myself. I get that. But then there's like the understand human interaction and respect. And you wouldn't go to a funeral in that shirt. You wouldn't go to a wedding in that shirt. It's just part of being respectful. Yeah. You touched on something and you dovetailed into where I wanted to go with that. I've made mistakes in life. We all have. And I hope people don't judge me for everything I've done wrong in my life. And I try not to be judgmental of others. But man, I've gotten to the point where if you're an unethical, immoral, lying, cheating piece of shit in any way, shape, or form, like I don't want nothing to you. Like I've helped people in business. I'm not smarter than anybody, but I've been in business longer than most people that are peers of mine, just like in business. And so like simple things, even like, hey, what's the best accounting software? Hey, check this out. Like I happen to know these things. And I've helped people, man, and they've shoved it up my ass. Like had a guy recently cheat a friend out of thousands and thousands of dollars that I hooked him up with. And to him, it's like, win some, you lose some. Like you basically robbed another friend of mine of thousands of dollars. Like you're not my friend anymore. Yeah. Well, that's not even between you. I can't be like, and this person I introduced to a lot of people in this community, like that kind of shit. And this is a dude that's like former spec ops guy. I think sometimes people overlook character because of what's on the shirt sleeves,
That's absolutely true. I mean, we've seen it on social media through the years where you could create the perception, which is people's reality of who they think you are. And you could really, truly shape that. And then it doesn't take long for that whole thing to come unwind. Like you could emulate and pretend all you want, but eventually the truth is going to come out. And I am the same way now. I mean, mostly if I am dealing with somebody who's toxic or somebody, I'll just start pushing them away because I already know the way I am, where I care about people, it will break me down. It starts to stress me. It starts to have a physiological effect. It starts to hurt my business. It starts to hurt my relationships. So now if I even get the sense of that, I'm immediately putting up blockades. And that's a good point. I don't think people, just because a guy has a trident or a long tab or is a SWAT guy, and they represent themselves as such, should take that at face value. I mean, context is super critical, even when training with somebody, even when spending your hard-earned money with somebody. And you truly don't know that until you get to know them through multiple venues of content, asking around. That we encourage. In fact, one of the things that we started doing is encourage people to look us up. And I'm like, don't contact my ex-girlfriends because then you'll never contact us. I mean, like,
he cried a lot. That's all I'm going to tell you. He cried a lot.
Contact friends of ours.
He used all my bubble bath.
Twice.
Yeah.
They're bombs. They're bubble bath bombs. I love those things.
Well, I like what you're saying. It's judge a man by his actions, by his deeds, not by his words or what he puts out. Because I can type anything and put it online. I can film any video. It's kind of why it's my own penance. I tell people often I have over and over in my life. Like it's easier for me to say that than say I'm, some good person. It's way easier for me. Go look it up. Google me. Read about it, and then I don't have to hide.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of just being real, man. I mean, so many people in this industry want they feel somehow, I mean, it's insecurity to me when they have to protect their ego. And that means just showing the world that they're perfect. And you know, it's chicks, it's dudes, it's influencers, it's this space and industry. And I think that's the wrong way, especially if you're trying to build a community. It's like, I tell people routinely, because a lot of people hold me in high esteem in certain elements, and in certain elements I haven't, you know, when it comes to my career in special operations, I did really well. But when it comes to like my life, my personal life, dude, I've made a shit ton of mistakes. I mean, I make mistakes every single day, and I'm just as real as you are because we make the same mistakes and trauma and deal with the same shit. But so I don't want them to hold me in that kind of esteem. I don't want them to think that I'm flawless, because I'm not. And sure. You know, and I think so much of social media is painting that picture, and it's sad that the people who are they believe their own accounts. You know, they believe their own posts. They believe their own aura that they developed of themselves, their own image. It's like, dude, you're not that way. You did cheat. You did lie. It's like, how about you just say it openly and then get over it and move on with your life?
Yeah. What kind of man do you want to be?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. That I think is what's most important. You touched on it earlier. It's not lost on me whatsoever that people pay me good money to pass on whatever knowledge we have in this space. It's not lost on me that there's a lot of young men, be it 1 or 1 million young men, that look to us for some type of guidance, that maybe didn't have good father figures, or maybe are just at a rough patch in their life. I talk to young dudes like at the range and stuff. And as I've gotten older, I don't know how old you are. I'm 42 this year. It changes so fast, man. I have had to remind myself over and over, remember how it was to be 20 or 19 or 25 or whatever. Like, I don't want to go back to being 25 years old. Like, I mean, it was great. I could do 150 push-ups, but I also, like, life sucked, man. For me, like, I made so many mistakes that it was like just dumb. So I have to remember these dudes that are asking for advice or coming because they're attracted to what we do, are trying to find out what we figured out at 25 and 30, etc. You know what I mean?
I like that idea, man. I always tell people, you know, the reason I'm so giving when it comes to like what you should do to be a good special operations guy, be successful in selection and ranger school, is because I didn't have that. And if I would have had that, I wouldn't have made so many mistakes. And I think part of being selfless just in life, period, is to give back, is to offer your experiences in life so people don't make the same mistake. And I think that's a cool responsibility that I've enjoyed thoroughly. I mean, I get asked more DMs and more questions about just life in general. Like, hey, I want to join the Army, but my mom doesn't want me to. What should I do? Well, have a conversation with your mom and tell her the reasons why, and tell her how passionate you are. And then maybe she'll see something in you where she'll go, you know, I want you to follow your dreams, or whatever it may be. But having a conversation with people and bettering those people to better their own lives, so we don't have a society of people making mistakes over and over again.
That is, I think there's no higher calling for an American male. My personal viewpoint. You know, you study history, I study history. I'm a huge fan of American history, and people think it was wonderful back in the day that, like, Jefferson and Adams and Washington sat around sipping whiskey that they made in their own barrels, and life was great. And they forget that there were black people out in their fields working, and that women and gays and people that didn't fit into their society were subjugated, or worse yet, enslaved. Like, shit wasn't always perfect, but those dudes, like, it was perfect under their understanding of what was right and wrong for the time. Not an excuse for evil or bad, but, like, if we don't continue to try to create good people, then the society just falls apart.
Yeah. I mean, our generation growing up without the internet, we didn't have anything but mistakes to guide our path. Now these kids can navigate really their lives with the cliff notes to every single aspect of their life.
Shit, just what you said about saving that guy's life with the beta blockers. Without Google,
yeah,
that dude, you'd have been giving him Tums.
Yeah,
you wouldn't have known what you were grabbing.
Tic Tac. Here's some Tic Tacs, man.
Right.
I mean, the access to information, technology is amazing, and I'm always a fan of technology and its way of benefiting the human race. But it's a double-edged sword. It's a detriment to many who just don't know how to handle it. I mean,
I was about to say that it's like with great response, or with great power comes great responsibility. Like, we have to be able to harness it.
Yeah, I mean, like, Instagram's a great example. I've seen guys do this, like close friends of mine, where they start trolling the IG, and they get snippets of this information, which is dopamine, and then they see chicks, and then they think these chicks this is the real version of them, and then they fall in love with the fake version of them, and then
Sure.
Next thing they're making mistakes, or spending days on Instagram, they're just doing dumb shit, and I'm like, that's the rabbit hole. That's the rabbit hole that you could find yourself in if you're not disciplined, if you're not taking the time to have some self-awareness to go like, oh shit, I am doing this. Maybe I should stop.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I am looking at this Instagram post of this dude doing this thing with this gun. Maybe it's not the full story or the full picture. I have seen in the last 6 months to even the year, a new trend of people realizing what is bullshit and calling it out.
Yeah.
And I like that. Even with me, if I've done it before. I actually, one of the big mistakes I made last year, which friends contacted me and said, hey man, don't put that up there, is I did a video, a short clip of me talking through one of my classes. And the way we cut the video, I said, hey, I was giving an example of a police officer who went up to a patrol car, came out of his patrol car and went up to a car he had just chased.
And this wasn't a fabricated story. You were reciting something that had actually happened.
Yeah, I was reciting exactly how it happened. And the police officer came out of his vehicle and he sprayed the guy who was in the vehicle with mace. And as soon as he sprayed him, he put the mace away and he turned around like, yeah, I just got that dude. Like, he turned around.
Using his ego.
Yeah, he's using his ego. He's like spraying him. And then the guy was like, well, the guy had a gun. So the guy turned, shot the cop in the back like a couple times, killed him.
Damn.
And I was talking about, if you start a fight, you finish a fight. Because in a circumstance where somebody else makes the conscious decision to end your life because maybe they're fighting for theirs, right? Just because the person's a bad guy doesn't mean their survival instinct to live isn't the same as yours. So if they turn on the switch and they're like, this guy's trying to kill me, I was just trying to rob him, now he's trying to kill me, I have to kill him. When does that switch turn off? Well, it's based off experience, based off mindset, based off a whole bunch of things that you can't calculate. So if you start and you flip that switch, it is very dangerous for you in the onslaught of executing the task and defending your life to go, boom, boom, I shot him and he's wounded. That's the end of the fight. And you just walk away. Because if that for you is the end of the fight, for him as a wounded animal, that
the beginning.
Yeah, he's gonna shoot you. So I said something like, don't be the guy, kill the guy in the fight, and don't be the guy who shoots you in the back. I don't care if the guy's running away, and you have to end the fight. Like, the fight's not over till it's over. And it made it sound, even saying it out loud, it sounds
made
wrong.
It sound like you were saying kill all opponents.
Kill all opponents and shoot him in the back. Run of the way.
You needed more context to that discussion for the listener.
Exactly, because I posted it, and people who are fanboys who don't really understand context are like, shoot everybody.
I get to do it. Mike said it. I can do it.
They're giving me these emojis. Oh,
my parking space.
So Mason Minner, who's a full-time SWAT guy in Arizona and gun fu fighter.
I know Mason. I was going to say, I know Mason. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very good dude. He's very competent and very good tactician. He called me and said, "Hey man, you need to take that down." I'm like, why? And he goes, "Go listen to it." And I listened to it. I was like, "Oh, I just put that out there on the interweb for everybody to see." It got thousands of likes. I'm like stripping it down, and then on the story saying, "Hey, we're not doing that. We're not teaching people that, but sorry about that." It's like shit can get lost in translation.
Yeah. Well, we're not talking about, I think that's the really hard thing about this space being advertised, because that's what these things are. They're advertisements for our business. Even though you passed on something that was valuable, it's still an advertisement. Hey, here's a taste of what you'll get when you come train with me. Here's the kind of stuff we pass on. It's still an advertisement. If I go watch the preview to a movie, I didn't see the movie. I shouldn't make a judgment on the movie by watching the preview on TV. And people, that's our challenge. We're passing on like, hey, you guys want to do brain surgery? Here you go. Here's a little Post-it note of information on how to do brain surgery. Like, have at it, guys. Make sure you wash the knife with Listerine before you start. That should be
your next post. You
right.
Take a picture of a sticky note and then write the thing out. It's a good post.
I think that's the challenge that we have as we continue down this road. And some people, you're talking about guys going down that rabbit hole. As you were talking, the thing that I kept thinking about is like, what's your goal? You said the dopamine dump. People have correlated heroin in social media likes, and depression and not likes. Like doctors have figured out our brain does the same thing. Like, they liked it. I got the views. And then if you don't get it the next day, I got to figure out what do I do next? That's where people go to put a fucking slack line up in a cornfield and start shooting balloons and stuff like you're talking about.
That's what it is.
But what's the goal? I think too many people, I'm guilty of it too. I'll sit there and be like trying to get some work done, check a feed on Facebook or whatever, and next thing you know, an hour's gone by, and it's like, wait a minute, the hell? I just went like a time warp and there goes a huge chunk of my life gone forever. And I think that I say this to myself, does looking at this or being in this application or platform further my goals? And sometimes it's yes, but usually it's no.
Yeah, that rabbit hole is dangerous, man. I've gone down that hole, and man, if you're single, that's a rabbit hole you don't want to go down. I mean, I used to date chicks off of Instagram, and that's a bad place to be, because there's like an equation, right? The more that you're trying to impress upon somebody and the harder you're trying at that, you're probably making up for deficiencies in your own life. And so you have to put out like the best silver platter that you can, as opposed to an account where you're just living your life. You're just doing you. And you're like, oh, that person's got a zit on their head and they're just kind of showing a selfie hiking, versus the photoshopped image where everything is perfect.
Yeah.
And now when I see that, I'm like, I don't even want to, like, that is to me, and being a businessman, I look at that and go, oh, that's just an image for profit, right? Mm-hmm. It's meant to make money. Let me check out the link. Yep, there's Patagonia. Yep, there's a couple of tags or stuff. Okay, so it's a business thing versus what is real. And I think that's the problem. The problem is the original intent of the platform was a social media platform where we could cross-pollinate and share our pictures and discuss that. But now, since Facebook has bought Instagram for $13 billion, it's a marketing platform.
Yeah.
So now you don't know what real is. So you think something's real, and you're like, I drink Bang energy drinks because a Colombian model with big tits and ass drinks it. It's like, no, that's the whole point. Like you're drinking that because, I was just watching 12 hours of that Briar, and it made me want to pick up a Bang. It's like, holy shit, it's shaping my behavior. It's crazy.
I think that there is a fine line where people like you and I can live authentically, promote a business, promote our ideals, our ethics, our philosophies, our morals, and be real doing it. And I think it's very important, like you said, Mason contacted you to, this goes back to what I was saying about not having any shitheads around me, which is something I've not wanted in my life for years, but you got to have people around you that'll call bullshit too and say, hey man, like, what are you doing? Or at the very least, if you're around people that are authentic and real, you won't even find yourself going into that stupid zone.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that influence. Like there was a little while early on, 5, 6, 7 years ago when we started promoting stuff on social media, I had to be really careful because I was still deeply connected to political campaigns. I was the vice chairman of a political party. And I couldn't be, it's not that I couldn't be, I had to make sure people didn't Google me and see me, swearing on the internet. And eventually I said, you know what, I don't like that I have to like be two people because of what somebody expects. But early on, there was a bunch of guys that now have huge social media accounts that kind of came to me for training and some mentoring. And I got like deeply involved in the bullshit, like clicky, gossipy internet nonsense. Did you hear what, Mike did? And holy shit, man, that guy's, I can't believe that happened. And like a year or two of that, like, I don't even want to talk to any of you guys. Like the only time you call me is like the weirdest shit. Like, like, I didn't like that in my real life, but like, so just don't surround yourself with people like that.
Yeah. And some people just feed off of it, man. I just had recently one of my guys text me, he goes, hey, I saw this thing where this guy was mentioning you and he said you're this and that. I was like, listen, dude, if I spent my life in business worried about everybody else, and then what am I going to do with that? You give me a piece of information, what am I going to do? Contact him and say, hey, fuck
hey man,
yeah, how dare you? Like, what am I going to do with that?
It hurt my feelings.
Yeah, I'm not going to do anything. It's like I take it as a comp. If somebody's talking shit about us and I understand kind of the direction that we're going and they're saying something, it's typically there's some form of endearment there. Mm-hmm. They do follow our stuff and they're super interested in what we're doing and they want to be, I don't know, they want to be recognized. So they say outlandish shit. So that we get that. But I don't want to hear it. All my guys know they don't, if there's anything like people are commenting stuff, saying stuff, and it's negative and it's toxic, delete, block.
That's what I do too. Bye. I'll give people the benefit of the doubt. I'll say, hey man, you maybe got the wrong impression. If you'd like to delete that or like, try to prove your point a little deeper without sounding like an asshole or being like, let's have that discussion. But if not, you can just, go elsewhere. I'll just block you from this platform because I don't need to deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't answer to you. Yeah, I bow to no man, especially some dude sitting in his mom's basement.
Talking shit.
Yeah, talking shit. It's a very interesting thing when somebody does that. My good friend Rob does our websites and he's been in business for years, very successful guy. I've had people try to copy what we've done over the years, and that's okay. Like, if you're trying to copy me, you're behind me, and that's okay. Like because that means I'm like at least a week ahead of you, or a month, or a year, or 2 years, or 5 years. Like, have at it, bro. Yeah. And I know for the most part, most people that try to do what we do aren't going to work like we work. Like I joke with people all the time that are like, I want to do what you do, man. It's so awesome. You travel all over. I just got a new truck, new to me. I get a new one like every 2 years, not because I'm fancy and I need a new truck, because I drive them into the ground, pulling a trailer full of steel all over the country. And I'm in the truck for sometimes 18 hours straight, Starbucks cups stacked up, pissing on the side of the road at 3 a.m., looking at the stars, trying to enjoy it. And then you get wherever you're going, you eat, go to bed. And I'm not complaining, but then I'm up at like 5 because I need like 4 hours in the morning to be awake because I'm old. And then I go to the range for 3 days and your voice is shot and you're not sleeping because you got to go out and drink with people and have fun. And then I drive home. And then I got to be a dad and a husband. And my wife's like, you're not paying attention to me. So I was like, yeah, go do it, And I know I'm not a pussy, like from a sense of like being able to work hard. So if I'm tired and wore out, most people are going to be, because I've worked.
I mean, you just stated my life. Like, that's my life. Like, I have that little thing that attaches your lip. It's like the little taint that attaches your lip. Dude, I blew that thing out yelling because I had to talk to my student on the line. And I had 20-something students. So that shit,
you blew the lip taint.
My lip taint is gone.
Oh, God.
Dude, and it hurts so bad. I can't eat. I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh my God. And I can't eat anything with salt. It's just miserable. But people see the highlight reel of our lives, like the spikes, the 10 stories that you put up. That's the cool shit. But they don't see dude, I have been in business for 4 years now, going on 5 years. And I can't even recall the last time that I actually took time for myself. I don't even remember.
Well, you need to do that. That's not healthy.
Yeah, I definitely do. Like, I don't have a balance of work life. My life has been work. So
I've gotten really good at that. I want to talk to you about that offline. Years in politics, my wife probably wanted to divorce me. I'd be at meetings at 10 o'clock a.m. to 10 p.m., dinners, raising money, driving to the state capitol, driving into Chicago, gone all the time. And at the end of it, like, just like your social media comment, like if your page blew up, once I pulled myself out of that life for about a year, I'd get phone calls. Hey man, I need your help. Hey man, who do you recommend for this? And all of a sudden I'm nobody. If I'd made a phone call to somebody in our capital or in one of the big political functions or big political parties, they'd be like, who are you? Like, it took just like a couple of years and you're gone. And I look back, like, all that work, we did good stuff. We got a load moved, but like, I'm gone. All that work is just, it's stardust, man. It's gone. Like, all the energy I put out. So like what we're doing now, we have to, I've got a sauna, a gym, the podcast room here. When I'm not working, I'm in my underwear. I've got my nice slippers, and I'm brewing coffee and making soups and shit. I made soup the other day and watched an awesome movie on the Disney Channel.
You went through a whole movie?
All curled up. I almost never, Togo. Watch the movie Togo. It's
really?
A true story. It's a true story about the pandemic in Nome, Alaska. I think it was 1925. What was it that they had? All these kids were dying. There's no roads in and out of Nome. It was like the biggest blizzard in 50 years. And a dog sledder, they created a tag team of dog sleds to go 625 miles to get the serum to cure all these kids that were dying. And nobody could go. So one dude out of the 625 miles, there was like 25 sled teams that all rode like 35 miles each. One dude and his lead dog, Togo, did like half of the whole journey, scaling these crazy mountains in Alaska in this like worst blizzard, and almost killed him. It ultimately like took this dog out of commission, but it was a really cool story. Yes, yeah, so I was fixated on that. Yeah. Yeah. So but anyway, you got the whole
thing. I can't.
No. Well, it's a well-known story. It was history, but you got to take time for yourself, man. Otherwise, you don't feel good when you're back out on the road and stuff. I've gotten to a point too where everywhere I go, I find something there that I want to do. Like, I go to like Civil War battlefields and take a day. That kind of shit. You might be had enough fill of that stuff. But I like American history, or I'll go to like a national park, even if it's just for an hour to take photos and walk around. I try to take my wife with me, and I'll drag her like this next trip to SHOT, which isn't a class, but work related. We're going to go visit the Grand Canyon. She's never seen it, and drive down there. You got to do that shit.
I need to do it, man. I just been bad at it. I think sleep, like for example, last night I couldn't sleep. I got up and what is that, 1492 or 1592? The whiskey?
You watched it? Oh, no, the booze.
The booze. It was like
that ruins your sleep.
Oh, yeah, it did. I took a little bit, like just a little nightcap, and I read T. Lawrence's book, The 7 Pillars of Wisdom, which is a hard book. man.
I've got it, and I've read a little, and then
it's reading that old English translation and shit. Like, damn it. But I did that, and that for me, if it's quiet in the house, that for me is a good time. And it's weird because taking a book, just picking up a book and actually reading a book, for me.
What are you reading there with the weed on it? It's got the weed symbol.
It's called The Hidden War. This is the book, John Norris.
About the narco war?
Huh?
The narco wars?
Yeah, it's about his time in California. He was one of the fish and game guys, and they converted a fish and game unit into a special operations unit because they were coming across on their own with really no firearm or firepower. Narco cartel grows in California.
Crazy.
And so they started a special operations unit that was arming them with the right firepower and training, because before that they had nothing. And they're just running.
Crazy. I'm going to have to look that one up and read it. You should try a warm bath and like a good IPA to fall asleep.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. Like even if you just drink like half of it, like get like a 7 or 8%er, take a hot bath, sip the beer. If you drink too much, then you got to get up and piss. It's a catch-22.
The carbs in that will put you down pretty good.
Yeah, I just drink half of it, and I have the other half for breakfast.
I want to get one of those hot saunas.
A sauna?
Like the sauna, I forget the
infrared.
Yeah, the little portable ones, but it doesn't use rocks. It uses
infrared technology. I've got an old school sauna here.
Oh, so it's infrared.
You're thinking of an infrared one where it heats up right away.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that, man. That's therapy for me, like thermal therapy. I need to do that.
It's cold here, not down by you probably as much, but like in the wintertime, I walk down here after letting the dog out, and I turn that sucker on. I sit in it, and then I'll have a little workout after my blood's all warm. It's good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what's like next on the agenda for you guys? Where does Fieldcraft go? You've gone through iterations. I see where you've had different dudes come in and out of the business. You've got a good group of dudes now. Some of the guys I know. You guys travel, but a lot of your stuff is right by you too, right?
Yeah, it's intermittent, man. It depends on what's going on. Like my calendar is booked out until May right now. So a combination of here and away training. Like I'm teaching California Highway Patrol this weekend, an open enrollment class this weekend. I'm teaching Denver SWAT the week after that, New Jersey SWAT a couple weeks after that. So I am coming.
Do you drive to most of those, or do you fly?
It depends. Like New Jersey, I'll fly. Colorado, I'll drive. It just depends on where I'm at. Like I don't want to take guns into New Jersey, but I just don't have a choice because it's like 40 hours away. It's just on the other side of the planet. So we're doing firearm instruction, but a goal for me as the CEO is to stop doing a lot of on the road training. Yeah. And so I've really limited my training, and having Raul, having now Kevin Owens, having a couple guys subcontracted, we could train and not really have to do a lot of me doing that training. Cool. So the podcast is a big one for us. YouTube now, a lot more content. We're up to 70-something thousand subscribers, which is big for us. Yeah.
I follow your channel. I watch the stuff you guys post. I see my old boy Raul on there.
Yeah, it's taken a long time for us to navigate. We'll be in Illinois soon. Raul will be there, I think, in March.
Where are you guys going?
I don't know. I'll let him run. He's got his own training schedule for the company that he lines out. I'm assuming it's somewhere near Chicago since he used to work there. But training is always a staple, but there's things that we have in the lineup. Like I have a product that's coming out in the next 60 days that is a dual branded product for 511 Tactical.
Cool.
It's an outside the waistband. Actually, I might have one somewhere around here. It's an outside the waistband tourniquet holder that holds a tourniquet for law enforcement, for civilians. So we're doing a little bit of that. And our goal this year is there's a couple military and law enforcement contracts that we're going after. for us, it's just more security net, and we always want to do open enrollment, but we always want to segue and do special operations training for special operations guys. Like,
yeah, that's not a means to an end. That's like, that's like farming. You're always like, what's the weather? Hope next year we don't get too much rain. It's constantly, and you can't, if you're going to try to earn a living off of that, you got to chase it every day, keep filling classes up and putting asses in seats.
For us, like swag and products and stuff pays the bills and covers our overhead, and we're doing really good at that. So that's not a problem for us. But to grow the company, we have to expand. And like, we just picked up the contract for Accuracy First, which is Todd Hodnett's.
I know Todd. Yeah, that's awesome. What are you doing with him?
So we are the only authorized trainers in the U.S. to be able to train military under using the Accuracy First banner.
Awesome. Congratulations. That's badass.
Yeah. The only reason we're able to do that is because Kevin Owens, who I hired, the Irishman, we were snipers together in the SIF company. He ran our Special Forces sniper course. He also did Todd Hodnett's first ever concept with Third Group. But he's got Todd's ear. He just spent some time with him recently and a couple of days ago. But he's allowing us to train military under his banner for contracts that he can't keep up with, or for, MARSOC calls. It's like, well, I got the Navy SEALs are in the chute. Sorry, you can't do it. Here, Kev, and here, Fieldcraft, go ahead and train the guys. So,
good for you. Good for you. Cool. That's fantastic. That illustrates kind of what I was driving at earlier. Relationships, man. Like, if you were a piece of shit, or you had a bad reputation, or burned somebody along the way, guys that, if listening, you don't know Todd. Todd's like a legend the last 20 years. He's a civilian that's like one of the most skilled long-range shooters on the planet. Like, you don't get a gig like that if you're a piece of shit. And it's amazing how many people they think too short-sighted.
Yeah.
How's this going to help me now, not down the road?
Yeah, 100%. We always say that reputation is everything, especially in the community that I'm in, but that will follow you everywhere, even into your civilian life. I know guys who currently own businesses and they don't have good reputations in the community. And will that hurt their bottom line with civilians necessarily? Probably not, but eventually that shit catches up. And if you're trying to do anything with the military or law enforcement, especially, like, we got guys who, like, we're going to train New Jersey SWAT, and those guys did background checks on us, talking to our peers and talking to our former unit commanders. And they're like, are these guys good dudes? I'm like, damn, that's good. I mean, that's good. They're vetting us like that.
I like that. Yeah. I think too often we put too much stock into what we see rather than what's really there.
Yep.
Talking about that, this stuff comes full circle. Another agency just called a friend of mine to vet somebody, and this guy said, well, I'm not going to tell you any details, but I will never hire that person. And the training sergeant that was looking to do like a lot of courses with this company said, okay, that's all I need to know, because he trusted that man's opinion. Yeah. That's all I need to know, man. Like, and he didn't need to bash the guy, didn't need to tear him down any more than he had already done to himself. But one wrong decision that for that company was a 6-figure contract that went poof because he had done some dishonest shit previously.
Yeah.
Not previously, like years ago, like he's a piece of shit. Yeah. And just the way it works out.
Yep.
Yep. I dig it, man. Not that, but I'm proud of you guys getting that stuff done, especially in this completely crowded space. That's good stuff. In the long run, you guys are passing that stuff on to the dudes that are out there kicking ass abroad.
Yeah, it feels good to do shit like that, man. I when you're disconnected from a community like law enforcement or military, it's like you want to give back and do something for somebody. And so for us, that's super important. I think in Fieldcraft's short-term and long-term plan, it's always like, how can we give back to the warfighters? For law enforcement, we do it already. I mean, I'm training CHP for free, New Jersey for free. and Denver SWAT for free. We're not making a profit off of those guys. That's our little way of giving back. So I think the military thing will be exceptional to do that.
I've got a good buddy on CHP. He's part of one of their high speed undercover teams, and they've got some really good dudes. That'll be a good time for them to get you out there. You put that post up. I don't want to keep taking up your day. You put that post up about your distaste with some of the things going on in this business. What spurred that?
I think a combination of a few things. Like one of them is a whole bunch of negativity about attacking other people in the space. You know, like I, in this conversation, would tell you my opinions on influencers and everything else, but I'm not going out of my way to ruin people's businesses.
Sure.
I'm not going out of my way to ruin people. And some guys, man, and even my own peers have this sense about them that maybe it's entitlement via social media, where they come out and they just attack people. I'm like, who the do you think you are, man? It's like, and who do you think you are? And what you're doing without understanding the full picture is ruining people's lives, right? You just can't do that.
Yeah.
Also, irresponsibility. You know, I was notified that somebody was talking shit, and I'm like, really? They're talking shit, really? That's pretty funny. They're talking shit, because I've mentored that person, that influencer, their entire young life in influencing, and gave them the opportunity to say, listen, you just teach what you teach and stay in your lane, you'll be fine. And then when they started deviating from that, it started to offend me, because I'm like, listen, your job is not to teach tactics. Your job is to teach gun handling and technical skill sets. You'll always have a place there. I wouldn't expect that, you know, JJ Rakaza would teach with an open gun that how you would kill bad guys on target using an open gun, because he knows his he's a USPSA Grandmaster World Champion, and he knows where he's going to stay in his lane. But some people in this industry and space don't know their place in their lane, especially with zero experience. And I think a lot of people would say, well, who the are you? Well, I'm a guy who spent his entire life taking pride in understanding tactics and teaching tactics. And I don't think I am the end all be all in tactics. I'll say that. I don't ever think that tactics should be a closed forum for discussion, because anytime you compartmentalize thoughts, ideas, and tactics, then you're not shaping and adapting to war or to combats or threats. So I think it's an open forum for discussion. That's why I'm openly saying it, that I want to protect the sanctity of the tactician and the importance of context and teaching when nobody else will. And if I have to do that via post pretty directly, I think I'll do that.
I appreciate all that. I've got a speech I give at the beginning of our training courses, and I have the students get into a circle and face each other, and I ask if they've ever attended any type of former martial arts training, and most of them say no, which is surprising, but most people say no. And I say, okay, who's seen Karate Kid, where Danielson bows to the mat and bows to the picture on the wall and bows to his teacher? Everybody says, of course I've seen that. And I ask if they know why. And most people will say, like, out of respect. And I'm like, yeah, it's respect, but it's respect for the totality of why we're learning this stuff. It's to take life, which is super important that we remember that. It's not just practicing something for fun. Like, it culminates in people dead. So, like, I think your point, people have forgotten, like, man, what I'm teaching people ends in people dying. Like, I should come to it with that sense of reverence that what we're passing on is that serious. It's not just to make a living or to build a business. It all ends in death, or at the very least somebody or jailed, be it for a soldier, a cop, or an average citizen trying to protect themselves.
Yeah, that's a heavy responsibility. I think just outlining it like that and communicating that more is so important in this space, because it's not just the exercise of an action. It's not just the exercise or emulation of a movement. It's like you said, it ends in somebody potentially getting shot and killed. And that's serious business, man.
I think there is enough dudes like you and others that are passing that on, that it's a shame on us thing. We got to this point because we got to this point.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like this just came out of nothing. There were dudes selling $13,000 CQB classes and somebody didn't say, bro, what the
Yeah, you're right. We definitely done it to ourselves. I'm just appreciative of, companies like yours and,
Thank you. I appreciate that, bro.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like I've been tracking you for years, and the first time I saw your shit, I was like, who's this dude? And then you start talking. I'm like, damn, what he's saying makes sense. You know what I mean? Like what he's saying is a really good way to communicate, thinking through problems and thinking about what you're doing versus just doing what I do, And I think most people have this modeled idea that people are just going to replicate what I do. So if you just do what I do and you look cool, then you're going to be squared away in preparedness or defending your life or killing people. But to actually talk through and understand exactly what you're doing and defining the why, I think you guys are really good at. You are very good at defining the why. That makes sense for normal people. You don't have to have a doctorate in tactics to understand what you're saying.
I appreciate that, dude. I appreciate that. I think if we keep on that road of putting out good stuff, the only thing that's all we can do. I mean, there's always going to be fast food restaurants in the world that make people fat and sick, and because some people want to be fat and sick. I can't get rid of McDonald's and Taco Bell.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's somebody
Chick-fil-A of the tactician world,
You want to be Chick-fil-A?
Just a moderate, like I want to have good values. Every once in a while, you could throw a peach or peppermint milkshake in you and just pretty level, man. Those fries are cooked in canola oil, so they're not
That's
that
funny.
Great.
That's funny.
Whole potato.
If the folks listening never heard from you again, only got to pass this way once with you on their journey through the universe, what would you say to them?
I would say, honestly, I want people to be kind to one another and to have empathy for each other. I've seen enough evil in the world to last a few lifetimes. And if people saw the level of true ideology that produces real evil in the world, it would sicken them to death. And so in the social media space and all the things that we're talking about has created divides, but there's so many opportunities to bring people together. And I think that's technically what we're doing. We don't have enough empathy. And I just wish, and I hope, and I pray that people have more empathy towards each other and understand that the responsibility that I might teach you or that you might teach somebody else is a responsibility of taking care of each other. Like I don't even want you just to do it to protect yourself and that of your family. But I think a responsible citizen that has empathy and humility for others is concerned about protecting the people of this country at a minimum.
I like it. I agree. I think of all the things that you could have said, that you guys listening, he could have said, train harder. He could have said a lot of bullshit to be a self-promoter, being kinder. That's a powerful statement, man. So simple too. I say, don't be a dickhead. You took the positive twist of that. I fixate on the negative, but I'm not a negative person, but that is, it's why do we do all this? Because we want to keep living and we enjoy living and life is good. So let's be nice and be happy. I just lost a dear friend the other day, and I was driving home from the cemetery, and I just was grief stricken, man, sobbing, driving, wiping my eyes. And I'm kept thinking to myself, what is this? Sadness, what is it? And of course it's the opposite of happiness, and scientists say it's chemicals in the brain and shit. But I'm thinking, is that really all this is? Am I this living creature sitting here, sentient being driving down the road, navigating at 50 miles an hour? Like, is all of this shit just chemicals inside of a ball of fat? Like, is that really like, like, you know, when I can't reconcile that. And like, why can't we just be nicer to each other? Not in a hippie kind of way, but the empathy, man.
Yeah. I think we'll all be better off if we just think to be more humble and kind to each other than just act without being that, you know?
Amen. How do people find you?
Fieldcraftsurvival.com, Fieldcraft Survival on the Google machine. I mean, we're all over the place. Our YouTube is that, our podcast is that, our Instagram is that. If people want to follow me personally, it's my first, middle, and last name. It's mike.a.glover on the Graham machine.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time to talk. I know we joked around when we started that we tried this for a long time. I'm glad we finally got it done. You guys listening, I'm assuming if you listened this long, you enjoyed it. Go follow Mike. Go follow his business. Let's proliferate and promote businesses, people, ideas that make the world better. It's pretty easy if we keep helping shitheads get farther in the world for there to be more shitheads. So it's pretty simple. Just don't support shitty people and shitty products and shitty ideas, and do the opposite. That's like, we talk about being better people, but be it, man. I appreciate you, Mike. I appreciate you taking the time. You folks listening, I hope you're subscribing to this channel, Carry Trainer. Forward these things on to your friends. If these conversations are meaningful, pass them on. We love you. Don't be a dickhead, or be kind, however you want to look at it. Be good.
Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com.